3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! We all exclaim at 12 a.m. on New Year's Day, midnight. And what we are celebrating now, for the most part in our minds, is the new year starts. The year starts its new cycle. And that's on January 1st. Uh, what New Year's is now used to be a 2-week long festival called Saturnalia, because it was the celebration of Saturn. And even in Times Square on New Year's Eve, you'll see they have, these are images from Times Square. You see this on the light board, Saturn. Um, Also, you have the ball drop, which it goes up, starts at the top, and then it comes down. They count, and then the ball drops, and when the ball hits the ground, everyone says "Happy New Year." That's to show, showing this the symbolic, fall of the sun, and now the sun is going to start its climb back up to summer when we get there to June 21st. So they squished this whole week-long festival into one evening on New Year's Eve. And so what would happen during Saturnalia, because the Saturn was a very worshipped, it's the oldest temple in Rome, the Saturn Temple, and they would have grand parties for a week long, and people would get dressed up and get very inebriated, and there would be lots of orgies and feasting and all kinds of yelling and screaming and noise making, hand clapping, pots and pans, all the things you see done on New Year's. And you can see this here. This is 2017, and here are some Saturnalians celebrating this beautiful, amazing planet. Saturn is a dwarf star. It's considered the opposite of the sun, and at one point in time, Saturn was our sun. Saturn was considered the good sun. Saturn was at the North Pole. You would see it. And you'd see all the Egyptian obelisks that would be pointing up to north. And what you would see back then would, you see Saturn would be at the top of the obelisk, with Venus and Mars right in front of it, because all the planets were polar-centric. They were all lined up by the North and South poles, so you had this stacked view of Saturn, and Saturn was close. It was as big as, if not bigger than we see the sun and moon now. And it would be right there by the North Star at the top, with an obelisk, sitting on an obelisk, just like that. And what would happen is the sun would be would move around. Let me draw this for you so you can see how Saturn looked. It was close, and if we put here a let me get a good color here. If we put an obelisk here, here's our fake obelisk, right? And Saturn would be right there. And then what would happen as the sun went around, Saturn, as the sun went around Saturn, it would give different times of the day. It would give it like a little crescent moon on there, like that, and then the crescent moon would appear on the top, or the crescent moon would appear on the side. just like that. And you'd have people would be able to tell the time by, if the crescent on Saturn was, say, right here at the bottom, that would be noon. That's the daytime. And then they would use Saturn to tell time. If the crescent was shining on top, that'd be nighttime, and so on. So you'd have Saturn, which is considered the timekeeper, and if you look over here, let me point my little, you'll see that here it is. Here's the obelisk, the building. There's Saturn. This is Times Square. This is Time Square, and square is another important thing we're going to get to in a second. But Saturn's the timekeeper, also known as Kronos, the timekeeper. So Times Square has a big old clock, and it has Saturn. It's a celebration of Saturn, and it's square. Saturn is also, the cube. You see there in Mecca, you have the square of Saturn, and the square is what people go and they walk around. It revolve around Saturn, around the cube. So Times Square is a celebration of Saturn, and it's appropriate that we have Times Square, and we have the celebration of the good sun, the Saturn, also called the dark sun because it's a dwarf star. It's losing its light, but it still gives great light, and it's far away from us now, and it's now all the axes of the planets are now facing each other from the side and not being polar centric like it used to be. So now we see a whole different universe. But every year on New Year's Eve we celebrate Saturnalia, which comes in the winter. Saturn comes into strength in December 21st at the winter solstice and says goodbye to the sun, and hello Saturn is going to take over for the next few months. Happy New Year and happy Saturnalia.